Maybe I got the
Good
wrong
morning. We are in the middle of chapter 44. We're about 2/3 in, and we're discussing a very beautiful idea about two types of love, and that the Alter Rebbe uses these words of kinafshi ivisicha, the love of that I yearn for God because I recognize that He's my life. And he said, Kibrad ishtada, like a son that yearns after his father, that I recognize God is bigger than me. He's like a father. And it's two different types of love that we discussed the last few weeks. Today, we're going to explain a tremendous quality of these two loves. That's something outstanding. But to appreciate it, we have to take a few moments to talk about two things. We're going to talk about the process of creation with worlds. I'm going to talk about the benefit of an acquired and developed love over a natural love. Let's first talk about creation of the worlds. We know that when God created this physical world that we live in, it was with a process of going through a number of worlds. And in different places, it's talked about different processes. In general, we divide it into 4 levels. And those are the 4 worlds of Atzilus, Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiya. The exact translation of these 4 words don't matter yet, but these are the 4 worlds of process. And what was the ultimate purpose? The ultimate purpose was this final world, the world of Asiya, the lowest of these 4 worlds, which really has 2 aspects, 2 halves of this world. There's the half that is the spiritual half of Asiya, and there's the half that's the physical half of Asiya, which means the world that we live in, Asiya, is divided into 2, the spiritual and the physical. We, all of us on this chat, as far as I know, are all living in the physical part of Asiya. We're physical people. The definition of something physical is that it has 6 dimensions: a top, a bottom, a right, a left, a front, and a back. If it doesn't have those, it becomes more spiritual. Like, for example, Wi-Fi is more of a spiritual nature to it. Electricity, gravity, these things have a magnet, radio waves. These things are more spiritual because they can't be tapped. They're, of course, physical effects, but they're more of a spiritual nature. Things that you can't see or touch or feel are usually more spiritual. That being said, if the ultimate purpose of God's creating these 4 worlds was this lowest world, the world of Asiya, why didn't He just make Asiya? They have this old joke that you always find something in the last place you look. So why don't you look there first? The answer is because you don't know that it's there. You can only when you find it, you know it's there. So it's the last place. When Hashem was creating the worlds, He knew what the final destination was. Why did He just start with Asiya? Why did He have to make all these higher worlds? The world of Atzilus, the world of Beriah, the world of Yetzirah, the spiritual half of Asiya. Just make the physical half of Asiya, and bam, you're home. You did it. Hashem doesn't have to go through processes like we do. It's all a natural and miraculous creation. And there are many answers given. One of the most important answers is the following answer. And it's based on the concept that these 4 worlds are not like 4 worlds very far. Like, first you start in the furthest galaxies or outside from there, and that's Atzilus. And as you travel millions of light years closer, you come to Beriah, and then Yetzirah, and finally you land in our galaxy, in our, in the world of in Earth, etc., etc. That's not how it is. Atzilus is not a spatial, it's not a space area. Atzilus is a dimension, it's a reality, it's a truth that's right here as much as anywhere else. Beriah is right here, Yetzirah is right here. They're just different dimensions, different truths, different worlds of reality. In other words, there's not a separate place called Atzilus that if you go far enough, you can reach there. Atzilus is a reality that if you're very holy, you can tap into it. Same thing with Yetzirah, same thing with Asiya. They're truth, they're realities, they're worlds of truth, worlds of reality that we don't see it. We see a different dimension. In every single event, there's different realities. When you have a person going to a convention in the olden days, and he took a horse to go to the convention, and he took a horse rider to ride the carriage and pull their coachman to pull their coach to the convention. As far as the horse is concerned, he wants to get to the destination for hay. As far as the rider is concerned, the coachman, he wants to get there to get paid. The people, the professors riding in the coach, they want to get there to discuss some ideas in philosophy. Does the fact that the horse is thinking about the hay diminish at all the purpose of the trip for the professors? In other words, they're living in different worlds. The horse sees the hay and thinks about the hay. The coachman thinks about a salary, and the professors are thinking about the philosophy. But each one of them is living in their own world. In other words, that's a small little way to understand that there are many worlds of reality. So why did Hashem create all these different realities? Because Hashem had a purpose. If he would have just created this physical material world, what can a person aspire to? Is that my highest I can reach? Is to be a physical person eating bread and butter, a bagel and lox? When Hashem created the spiritual dimension, he gave us opportunity to reach higher than ourselves, to connect with that spiritual reality that's above us. And in that, he created various dimensions. We could reach as high as the spirituality in Asiya, as high as the spirituality in Yetzirah, which is above that, Beriah, which is higher than that, and Atzilus, which is even higher. In other words, the purposes of multiple levels of reaching this point of creation is to allow us to tap into that, to reach those levels, which means if Hashem would have just created the world in one glunk of Asiya, this physical world, we couldn't go any higher. We'd be trapped in this reality the rest of our lives. We couldn't become spiritual. We couldn't elevate a piece of challah to become something holy. We couldn't elevate something to make a Shabbos candle glow beyond the physical glow. We couldn't take a pair of tefillin from leather and make it holy. It's only because it was a process that we have a chance to tap into those higher levels, those higher truths, those higher realities. So in other words, there are four basic levels that Hashem created: Atzilus, Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Let's talk about them. It's interesting, by the way, in the Zohar, there's a little picture in your mind that's very different than the picture in our mind that I had since I was a child. And that is when we dream about Yaakov, when we picture Yaakov's dream, where he falls asleep on the Temple Mount and he has a dream of angels going up and down the ladder. I always pictured the ladder as a ladder with hundreds of rungs. According to the Zohar, there were 4 rungs corresponding to the 4 worlds. It was a 4-rung ladder. You know, I'm sure many commentaries describe it many different levels, but and Kabbalistically speaking, there were 4 rungs. There was the level of Asiya, above that Yetzirah, above that Beriah, and above that Atzilus. So what are these 4 worlds? And it's very important to understand. We discussed this a little bit in chapters 39 and 40. I want to remind ourselves what we discussed there, and that's going to help us understand where we're going in the next couple lines at the end of this chapter. Atzilus is the level of reality, of truth, the level of the world that's the ultimate level of spiritual holiness. What is holiness? The definition of good and evil, or holy or not holy, is dependent on one thing: how much self I have, how much am I nullified before God, and how much self do I have? In other words, the ultimate in holiness is absolute transparency. But tzaddik, the ultimate tzaddik, has no self. He is like a window. When you look at a tzaddik, look at the Rebbe, look at Moshe Rabbeinu, look at the David HaMelech, you didn't see David HaMelech, you looked through a window because he was no self and you saw God. Which is why, by Hasidic groups, we're so attached to Rebbes, because to us, a Rebbe is not a shining light bulb. He's a window to light that allows God to come through it. When someone says, why do you talk so much about the Rebbe? It's like saying, why do you stand so much by the window? I stand by the window so I can see what's beyond, but the wall's not letting me see. The wall's blocking my view of the mountains of the ocean. So I stand by the window, not because I like to see the glass. The glass is just a way that allows truth to come through. Meaning the ultimate in holiness is absolute transparency, which that is a Rebbe. That is the tzaddik. That is holiness. The more you have self, the more you block, the more opaque the window is, the more of a wall I am between what stands on the other side, the more it's unholy, the more it is further and further from ultimate holiness. So Atzilus is the world, and we translate it as emanation. What does emanation mean? Emanation means, the word Atzilus actually has 2 different translations that we often use. One is Eitzel, which means close, because it's so close to God. But Netzel also means to emanate, like when you stand next to a hot heater and you feel the radiant heat coming off, so it emanates. An emanation of something has no truth for itself. What am I really feeling? I'm really feeling the source, the hot coils, or the heater, or the warmth of the sun. which means all I'm really feeling is the original. There is no separate identity called that which is emanating. It's nothing more than the actual sun being felt, or the heat, or the radiant, or the source. So in other words, Atzilus is the world where I don't exist as a separate identity. In that world, for the record, there is only the souls of the highest tzaddikim. A soul of Atzilus exists there. It's the highest source, the highest type of tzaddik, because it's the absolute transparency of existence. You don't see, and there is no self. There is no self in any way, shape, or form. The world of Beria, which is one level down, in this world, the word Beria by definition means creation. Creation means like an apple that falls from a tree. Yes, the apple fell from the tree, and the apple is pure apple tree. You're not going to have fall from this tree a peach if it's an apple tree. You're not going to have a banana fall from the tree. What you see in the creation is 100% that came from the tree, but yet it exists. And existence, and therefore self, and therefore the lack of pure spirituality, doesn't mean only when something is bad, like selfish and ego or wrong sort of self. Even lofty self, I feel the value of my service. That's beautiful. I love God. That's beautiful. But there's God, and there's you, and you love God. You're an identity. Very lofty, very holy, very special, but not Atzilus. Atzilus is the highest world where souls can usually go to, even though some souls make it to Atzilus. For angels, they can't go above Atzilus. Angels, by definition, they are created entities. Therefore, unlike a soul which is really one with God, the angels, the highest angels, the highest they can go is Beria. The vast majority of angels live in the world or dimension of Yetzirah, one world down. Now, this is a very important to understand. Why are angels not able to make it to Beria? They live in the world of Yetzirah. Because we have to also understand another name and understanding of all these worlds. The world of Atzilus corresponds to the reality of Chachma. Chachma is the highest form of cognitive abilities. It's not a part of your cognitive abilities that you develop by thinking. It's like the initial seed that the man gives to his wife to create a child. There is nothing seen in that seed. There's nothing in that little drop, that dot. There's nothing actually there except the inspiration to go and develop that into some idea. In other words, Chachma is what's called Koyach Ma, the power of what? Koach Ma is the words Chachma. Take the letters, Koach Ma. The power of what means what? What? Nothing there. What? What means what are you talking about? What are you saying? There's nothing there. In Atzilus, there is no identity of the recipient. There's no identity of self. There's no area where a thought is developed. It's purely the inspirational spark let's call it a spark is the best word. It's a spark that comes from the innerest part of God. It's an emanation. So Atzilus is Chachma, the highest form of any sort of, we can't even call it existence, but any sort of process, the starting point. Then we have Beria. Beria corresponds to Bina. In the creation of a child, Bina is the mother. Chachma is the father, Bina is the mother. What does the mother do? She takes the seed, and together with her egg, and she develops that to a full child. Arteries, limbs, flesh, blood, eyes, a full-on existence, which means Bina is an intellectual developed thought. But it's only intellectual, it's not emotional. Bina is the level of what's the difference between intellectual and emotional expression. Intellect has no self included. The second you mix self into intellect, you lost it, it's biased. It's no longer authentic intellect. Emotions are completely self, which means true intellect is objective, true emotion is subjective. If I have a piece in a fight or an argument or politics or anything, if I am somehow involved, I will not be honest intellectually because I have an emotional connection. And therefore, if I am on the side of someone defending or prosecuting, automatically I'm only going to see it. It's like somebody who was bribed. Somebody who was bribed doesn't become a liar, doesn't become a dishonest person. I'm not talking about today in politics bribing. I'm talking about, let's say, in the olden days when there was a court case and somebody came to the rabbi and bought the rabbi a cake. The rabbi said, I can't judge a case anymore. Why not? I just bought you a cake for Shabbos. I bought you some challah. I made a donation to the shul. Sorry. Once I have some relationship, even if I don't want to, I can't help it. I'm no longer objective. I am part of the story. True intellect has no involvement at all with self. That's Beriah. Beriah is the world where it's 100% object and no self. Now, there is already a thought. That's not Atzilus. Atzilus is above any description. It's Beriah. It's the next world. But there is no emotion, no feelings, because feelings require self. Interesting idea that, let's say I want to convince you of something. I could only convince you if there's no emotional involvement. For an example, today in politics, you will never change someone else's mind. When I say never, I mean probably never. I'm sure it happened one time. Why not? Because we're all emotionally involved. We're all very, very subjective to the situation. If I wanted to discuss mathematics with somebody, I could change your mind. Why? If you're an honest mathematician, you made a conclusion, I could show you, if I was a good mathematician, why you made a mistake. In chemistry, I could show you why you made a mistake. In philosophy, in ideas where people are already some self-involved, specifically when it comes to something more emotionally involved, which is politics and all other things in sports where people get emotion, my logic won't help you. I could explain to someone who doesn't get it with enough effort why 2 + 2 really equal 4, even though they think it's 5. But I could never explain to somebody why pizza is a much more delicious food than lasagna, because that is all subjective to how I internalize and feel about pizza. So you can't explain a feeling as something which requires your interaction. Ideas of disconnected from feelings could always be truthful because there's no self involved. The second self is involved. You'll notice there's truth when it comes to a lot of ideas in philosophy, opinions in politics and sports. Depends what city you're from. It depends what family you're part of, where you go to shul, if you're more of this. Why? Because politics is not pure intellect. It's a very emotional thing. It deals with many, many issues, from issues that affect my personal self, issues that affect how I think other countries should interact with America, beyond what is absolutely pure intellect. Therefore, when we talk about the world of Beriah, let me just shut some of the other phones that are making noise. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna. Okay. So when you talk about Beriah, it's a world where there is no self. Pure, the world is called Bina, intellect. Let's go down a level. Yetzirah. Yetzirah is the world where we say all angels live. It's the world of emotion, midas. Why are all angels there? Emotions are natural. What's the difference between intellect and emotion in a person? Your initial response to anything is emotional, not intellectual. Someone says something to you, your gut natural reaction, unless you're a mature person that has proper mind over matter, as you should be, a mature adult, when someone says something to you, you don't blurt out all your feelings. If we all acted on our feelings, our instinctive response to everything, it would be a pretty scary place. That's what children do. They cry if they're upset, and they scream and they dance if they're happy. Adults know there's a time and a place. As you spoke in Tanya, the famous example we gave many times about if a person owns a dress or a clothing store, and your absolute best customer gives you 60% of your business, is the most annoying person you met in your life. Every time she comes in, she spills coffee on your desk and she talks and irritates you and insults you and everything. You have a choice. You could use your emotions and get upset and yell at her, or use your intellect and say, 1 second, she is my best customer. 60% of business comes from her. I will listen. Meaning your mind could control your feelings. You can come in and you guys say, hey, Mrs. Goldensmorthy, so nice to see you. In other words, I could control my emotions, but what's my instinct? To get mad. So instinct is emotion. Nature is emotion. Using intellect is already taking your soul, your self, your elevated self to control your instinctive self, which, by the way, what all Hasidus is about. All of Yiddishkeit's about controlling your impulsive self by your intellectual, by your knowledgeable, by your you're talking your brain governing your heart, versus, instead of vice versa. So when we say that the world of emotions is natural, that's what angels are. One of the names we have for angels are chayes. They're animals, not in the negative way. Animals means animals have gifts. One animal can make honey, one can build a nest, one can be creative in making spider webs, one builds dams. Animals are, but they're not considered to be, wow, look at this brilliant spider. Did you see the nest she built? I mean, the web she built? It is incredible. She must have gone to school for years and developed tremendous spider web building skills. No, that's how God made it. Meaning, it's not a quality you developed. Animals have skills and instinct and sense of smell and speed and agility based on nature. That is angels. Angels are not good because they work on themselves. Angels aren't good or righteous because they develop the thought, you know what I should do? I got to become a better person. I got to work on the way I respond when God calls me in the morning for services. That's their nature. That's why they live in the world of Yitzhak emotion. It's natural for them. Human beings are not natural to be holy. We naturally like staying in bed. We like having our back scratched. We like good coffee. We like good food. We like to be made to feel good. We don't like to be insulted or left out or ignored or made to feel lower down. Because our instinct, our nature is to care for self, not for God. Therefore, when a Jew does a mitzvah, does something good, where does that land him? Not in the world of Yetzirah with the angels, but in the world of Berea, the higher world. So when a Jew does a mitzvah, we said in chapter 39 and 40, when a Jew does mitzvahs, which most mitzvahs that we do are done because of working on ourselves, that is much more amazing because we put self aside. Self aside means intellect. We go to the world of Berea. If we just do mitzvahs naturally, we're like an angel. So in the world of Yetzirah, the incredible part of a Jew doing a mitzvah is to elevate ourselves above our nature. And that is the beauty of these four worlds, that we could not just live in Asiya and not just elevate to Yitzhak, we can go to the Bria, the world where we leave self, where I'm not putting on tefillin or keeping Shabbos because it makes me feel good. I'm not being kind or lighting Shabbos candles or making a blessing or benching because I want to do it. My mind tells me it's the right thing to do. I feel it. I realize it. I recognize the importance. And now what's even cooler is when we can take these intellectual truths and now develop love, develop fear. That love and fear, now we said, going back to 39 and 40, we said there that when a person does a mitzvah, you see in the world of Asiya, the world, the lowest world, if we said that Atzilus is Chachma, and Beria is Bina, and Yitzira is Midas, emotions, what's Asiya? Action. Action is three things: Machshava, thought; Dibur, speech; and Maisa, action. The world of action really incorporates all three. When you want to get technical, you could say in three, thought, speech, and action is the most actionable of all of them. But all three of those are physical, meaning why are they called action? Because they're all really garments. They're really interactive tools. The word I'm looking for is, well, I'll get the word soon. They're tools for interacting. That's how I connect. That's how my interface, that's what I'm looking for. The interfaces between the soul and the world around me. Thought comes from my soul, speech comes from my soul, action comes from my soul, each one a little more disconnected. So this world is the world of action, the world of thought, speech, and action. Now, the truth is that every single thing in this world is a lie. They used to have a joke that say everything in the newspaper is a lie, even the date was printed yesterday. You know, that was an old joke. But what does it mean everything in this world is a lie? It's a lie means it's not being honest. In truth, everything comes from God. But when you see something, you don't see God, you see the thing, so it's a lie. Where in fact, this pen is being created right now by God. I don't see its true source. So when I say it's a lie, I mean it's a concealment. It's dishonest. The only place you have God revealed is in a mitzvah. When you light a Shabbos candle, you go, oh, now I see what the world is about. It's godliness. Put a coin in the pushka. Make a blessing. Give some meaning. Where's the truth of God revealed when I do a mitzvah? So in this world, where is the only moments of truth? When a mitzvah is being performed. That's when the concealment's taken off. I don't see the world as an independent, isolated, disconnect from God. I see the world as a perfect unity with God. With this pen, I'm writing a letter of kindness to someone who's lonely. With this cup, I'm making a blessing. I'm making kiddush. With this candle, lighting Hanukkah candles. In other words, when you do a mitzvah, you're revealing the truth that the world is not an independent, disconnected reality, but it's part of God's master existence, master plan. Now, but that mitzvah still remains in Asiya, in the lowest world. It's just revealed. How do you get it to go up? Love and fear, we mentioned, were the wings. When you do the same mitzvah without feeling, it just is revealed. It's a mitzvah, truth. It is godly. But when you do the mitzvah with love and fear, those are the wings that can take the mitzvah into the spiritual part of Asiya, into Yetzirah, the world of angels, into Bria, the world of the higher level of souls, and of course, Atzilus, we can almost never get to. Only the greatest of souls go there, because there is absolute transparency. So in other words, the background information I have to remind ourselves about now, in order to go further in this chapter, is to remember that when does your soul soar higher than the physical and spiritual levels of reality? not just to reveal the truth that it's a part of God's master plan, but to actually soar, is when we do our mitzvahs, not just naturally loved, but a developed love. Because if it was a natural love, we're no better than the angels. Nothing personal to the angels, but we're no better than, they're also natural. But when you force yourself to have a feeling of love, not that I love Hashem so much, but you develop a feeling of true sense of self, of identity, and who we are and what we're not. And we can create with ourselves a created love. That is like Bina, that goes up to the world of Bria, the ultimate level the average Jew could reach. Very few angels get to be there. And this is the ultimate level for a soul to reach. A Jew living in this world is to elevate his mitzvahs, or his soul doing the mitzvah, to that world of Bria. So that being said, now we can understand what we're going to discuss in the chapter. We discussed until now in this chapter, now going back to chapter 44, we discussed in this chapter that there were two loves that we're addressing now, these two hybrid loves. These two loves that on one hand, why we call them hybrid? Because you mentioned that the nature of Ahava Rabbah, the ultimate love, the highest level of love, can't come through developing it. It only comes as a gift from God. To the highest people, the greatest souls, get this love as a gift from God. You can't get there. You can't make it happen. You can't create it within yourself by meditation. On the other hand, we said the love of Ahavas Eilam is a love that you could develop. So these two loves are loves that really encompass both of these aspects. It has the gift and it has developing. What were these two loves? We call them the love of Kinafshi Ivisicha, the love that comes from recognizing that my soul, my life, all comes from God. And this is a gift. You're born with this feeling. This is a gift from Moshe Rabbeinu and the forefathers, that you're born with a gift inside of yourself that naturally a Jew deep down inside has a knowledge and an awareness that your life is God, or God is your life, which means yourself, you're just a lump of flesh and blood and bone, another matter. And what makes you alive and a living, feeling, thinking, emotional, intellectual being with life is God's soul that's inside you. This truth, when it's developed, it becomes a tremendous yearning for God. Why? I recognize that's everything. That's all. That's my whole existence. And it creates if you think about it, a tremendous attraction to God because you know it's your source. That's called Kinafshi Vesicha. Level 1, which is a hybrid. Level 2, the higher level of hybrid, is also pre-installed as a gift to every single Jew. But this is not that I recognize God as my source and my life. I recognize God as my father. And that's called Kibra de Ishtad, like a child that yearns to please his father. The ultimate child today, in our world, there's so many psychological issues with parents and children. We have trouble understanding the beauty of this relationship sometimes, because as beautiful as it is, unfortunately, in the complex world we live in, it's a very challenging relationship for a lot of people. For I'd say almost everybody, the parent-child relationship. Doesn't matter your age, that's the reality. But in the true altruistic relationship in a father and a son, a mother and a child, the relationship is that the child desires the well-being of the mother more than self. If you can put aside all the issues, all the complexes and issues and the matters you discuss with a therapist, you can put all that aside. The ultimate truth is that the child cares for a parent more than self, and that's the higher level. Why is that higher? Because when you recognize that God is your life source, the ultimate you'll reach is an absolute yearning to feel that and connect to that. But you're not going to give up your life for that, because that's the point. God is my source. But if you have the feeling of God as my parent, God is my father, the attraction, the love, the yearning could actually come to a point where I'll give up my life for God. I'll give up my life for God. Why? Because just like a child will give up his life for his father, my love for God is not as a love for my own life. It's like a love of something bigger than my life, my parent. Those are the two loves we discussed. Now the Alter Rebbe, based on everything we just now explained, is going to introduce to us some beautiful, fantastic insights, and that's the rest of this chapter, into these two loves. But we have to remember everything we spoke about Atzilus and Beria and Yetzirah and Asiya in order to appreciate the next few lines. For those who are following inside, we're on page 126. That's the top number on the page. You're following on the page. The top number is 126. We're about 10 lines in the bottom, right by the colon. There's a colon there, and that's where we're up to. V'hinei, Beis bechines ahavas elu. These two loves, meaning both the love of ki nafshi ivisicha, the love of like I see God as my life and my soul, and the love of kibbutz ishtar, like a child that yearns after his father. Both of these loves, even though these are pre-installed, biological in our DNA, it's actually in our DNA. There are things about Jews, and this is one of the things you mentioned a number of times, the beauty of someone who converts and becomes a Jew, that they get these things too. It shows you that being a Jew is not just some spiritual concept. It's a true in your identity, in your DNA, in your flesh and blood, because even someone who converted gets this inheritance 100%. So it's something which is part of the DNA of being Jewish, even though it's natural. It's like a nature, like an instinct inside of us. In chapter 19, the Alter Rebbe said, it's like the nature of fire, a flame that flickers upward. That's what it's like. You might say, sometimes we say, don't do this. If you do this, I'm disconnected from God. And a guy might say, why do I care if I'm disconnected? I don't know God. You're saying you don't know it, you feel you don't know it. It's like a child that says, I don't know, I'm like my parent. You can say whatever you want, but when it gets down to it, God forbid, in the moment of truth, when the Kazakhs are coming or the Crusaders are coming, all that stuff goes out the window, and you'll see how much you love God in that last instant. Because there you can't fool yourself. It's a nature, it's an instinct like fire to go up. It's inside pre-installed in a Jewish nature is to have this feeling of kinafshi v'sicha, that I see God as my soul, and kibrade ishtadla, I see God as my father. Not just in a way of love, he says, v'chen yira. Remember in chapter 41, we start off explaining that the truth of yira, fear of God, is not the word fear we use in the English language all the time. Fear means an awe, a tremendous sense of trepidation. What does that come from? If you imagine somebody who develops a beautiful relationship with someone new to the point of marriage, or even getting married, this feeling of love comes along with a tremendous awe. I don't want this to end. I don't want to do anything that would ruin this relationship. Meaning the motivation that you don't do things to hurt the relationship, not to say things that hurt his or her feelings, etc. Not because I'm afraid I'll get caught or get busted. That's cheap stuff. The ultimate awe is I don't want to do anything to ruin this relationship. I so much value who I'm with. I so much value the respect to my parent. I so much value respect to this great thing. I'm in awe, and I would shake and shiver to do anything that would ruin this relationship, to get in the way. That awe is interdependent on the love back both ways. The love is independent on the awe, as we said before. When it comes from a state of awe, it's not gluttonous love. I love you because you make me feel happy. I love you because you make my day, you make me complete. It's I love you because of you, who you are. I love you. And the same thing, the awe is not awe, I'm afraid. When it comes from love, because it's an awe that I'm in tremendous awe not to do anything to ruin this relationship. So this year also is pre-installed. While we usually discuss the ahava that's pre-installed, also is the year of pre-installed. That means a Jew is born with a pre-installed love and fear of God that's absolute, unshakable, indestructible. Hakul behem, which this year is included with a love. And he explains here. Don't think we're talking about a fear of punishment, God forbid, or a fear of sin, or fear of this. I'm afraid to be disconnected, and he uses both words. The words of chayenu, my soul, my life, v'avinu, my father. Because again, we're discussing both of these unique hybrid loves. The love of kinafshi v'sicha, I recognize God's my soul, my life, and the love that I recognize God's my father. So I don't want to do anything to ruin these two relationships of chayenu and avinu. Nevertheless, even though these are natural, but still, when are they called natural? And this is very key. When are they called natural? If it remains as an intellectual reality or truth, as not developed into a full-blown emotional feeling. This is the key of the next 5-10 lines. They're only called natural. They're only called natural, meaning, remember this keyword, natural is flawed. If you're natural, you know better than an angel. If you're natural, you're not living to the full dream and potential of a soul that can challenge itself. You're living the life of an angel, which is pre-programmed, which is like an animal, like a spider that makes a web. Yay! You're not doing something incredible. You're not going beyond self. So when is these two loves, when is this love in both dimensions of Avinu, my father, and Chayenu, my soul, my life, when are they called natural, meaning the flaw of natural? Is if you keep it only in your mind and your intellect and your cognitive abilities, and the recesses of your heart, you have not yet pulled it to the fore. Then they get to live. It's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. If someone can serve God on this level, the wings of this love and fear will take you all the way to Yetzirah, all the way to the world of where the angels are sitting and glowing in the splendor of Hashem. But it's Yetzirah. It's not Atzilus, of course not. It's not Beria. It's Yetzirah. It's higher than Asiya, but it's only Yetzirah where the angels' domain is. And true, in that place, when you're serving God naturally, without working to fire up and explode this love, as we'll see in a moment, then the beautiful mitzvah that you did, and it's beautiful and it's gorgeous, has reached the level of an angel, which is so beautiful, but it's not the potential that a Jew could reach through developing something. But if you could bring it into your heart by the meditation and like anything else you get worked up on, you could talk about anything you want in the world and get worked up, whether it's excitement for going on a trip, for anger at somebody, love for somebody, enjoyment of fresh made schnitzel that's crunchy and yummy and juicy, meaning the feelings that you can develop, the smells, the sense, the taste that can evoke and awake to the point that your hands are sweating from anger or fear, or you're excited and dancing from joy. These powerful pulsating feelings that can be developed through our effort of meditative powers and thinking and discussing and talking, then it's called the love of the heart. And what's called and then it elevates to one more level up, to the higher world, to the world of Beria, above Yetzirah, above where the average angel can reach. And on that level, you could elevate the Torah, the mitzvahs, all the good deeds that you did, to this higher and more incredible level called Beria. Why? How could you do that? Why is it no longer called animalistic? Or natural, as we just said. When you take this natural pre-installed DNA love or fear that you were created with, and you pull it out from its source in your heart, in your mind, or in the depth of your soul, when you pull it out, El Halev to the heart, El Bechinas Gilui to a revealed state, because the bottom line is, and here's the key, why is it called developed love if it's natural? This is what the Alter Rebbe wants us to know. If this love came pre-installed naturally, why is that different than an angel's love? And he explains right here, and I'll read these two lines over in a second, because the only way to bring it to the surface is through tremendous effort. Meaning, it's like having a gift wrapped in a box. Someone who could be an artist and never paints doesn't make you an artist any more than somebody who could steal and doesn't steal. You're not a thief, but I could steal. You're still not a thief. If you could be an artist and you don't draw, if you could do a mitzvah, you could love God. When something is a could, it means nothing as far as action. The fact that you have it inside you means nothing until you develop it. And therefore, since developing it requires what he calls here, kiyas hamachshava, pounding of the machshava, over and over and over and over, to think about these thoughts and develop them. If you remember the previous Rebbe's talk from 1931, where he said, we're talking about spending 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, for 20 years to get to this feeling. In other words, it's not something you're going to get. You decide, okay, I want to learn a new language. I'll do it in 2 weeks. You have to develop months and months of developing feelings and focus and meditation to get to a point that this love will come out, not in some imagined fantasy reality, but to actually come out in the pounding way where your heart is pulsating and you're feeling the love of God. This is something that takes years of development, not some fantastic imagined experience that you'll feel by, reading some Kabbalah and some going to attending some spiritual class. This is authentic stuff. To get there requires action and effort and work. That's why, even though it starts off spiritual, it starts off pre-installed natural, it's only called authentic when you develop it, and therefore it can take you till Beria. Because by the time it's developed, it came through so much work that's not called natural anymore. It's true that it's natural, the ability is pre-installed. It's like someone who has the ability born with the greater skill of become a violinist than someone else. One person is born with a natural gift to be a violinist, and one person isn't. They could both spend the same amount of time working. Only one's going to become the great musician. One will be a nice musician, but only one will be Yitzhak Perlman. Why? Because you have to have it within you, and then you have to develop it. Yitzhak Perlman is not just told, "Oh, you were born with the skill." He spent I don't know how many hours a day, I don't know how many years to get to that level of skill that he has, because he honed it. And that's the idea here. Yes, it's pre-installed like an angel, but it only comes to the fore with tremendous effort. And then, now he's going to ask one more question. I'm going to address that question first, and we'll finish with this class. The question is going to be now, so why is it so important? If it's there anyway, why do you have to develop it? If it's there, and if it's true, why does my external action help? And the answer is you only get to a pulsating, vibrant, active, tremendous expression through service. Meaning it requires both. Each one's important. You have to have it pre-installed so you could ever reach this high level. But at the same time, you have to have the effort yourself in order that it shouldn't just be a dormant, true, secretive love. There are people that have millions of dollars in the bank, or it's actually banks probably. They have billions of dollars in the banks. What are they doing with that money? Why does it benefit them? When they die at 100 years old or 120 years old with $1 billion in the bank, or someone dies for that matter with $1 million in the bank, what did that money do for you? Money only has a value if you're going to use it. If it's locked up in a box, the Rebbe once told Israel with its strength and its tremendous weaponry, and the Rebbe said you're only strong enough if you're willing to use it. If everyone knows you'll never use it, that does not call strength. Strength is when it's usable. Something which is not usable, the strongest man who's tied up is not strong. If you have abilities and gifts and you're not using them, that's not called abilities and gifts. It's called a waste. It's called an absolute waste. They should have given it to someone else if you're not going to use it, in theory. So let's do this inside. The reason why it's no longer called natural instinct like an angel, and it doesn't just stop in Yetzirah, but it could eventually make it its way all the way to Berea through your effort, because the effort that we're talking about is not a light effort. It's a continuous, very, very strenuous effort that he calls the pounding of the thought, meaning pounding. It doesn't mean like the hard banging of a hammer that gives you a headache. We're talking about the over and over and over and over going through this thought until you can get it. There's a with tremendous meditation. From the depth of your heart. Yotir v'tadir, more and more in depth and more in frequency, to constantly work on yourself. And to think about these two meditations, the meditation of Kinafshi V'sicha, that God is our life, and Kibrade Ishtadlan, God is our Father, to come to these things, and He's our life.